amongst thieves. Now,
right, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Let's talk about this word churn, because anybody who's done any business on Wall Street, and I worked on Wall Street for many years, churning is basically, on the retail level, you have a retail customer and they might have $1 million with you. If the more you turn it over the course of the year, if you can turn that $1 million and reinvest it every week, 2 weeks, or a month, you're making commissions on that. You're churning the account. The fees add up quite dramatically, and that's the way most of the business is done on the retail level. But here you're talking about on the institutional level, talking about J.P. Morgan coming into a municipality, multi-billion-dollar deals, churning this project. Can you get into some of the specifics of how J.P. Morgan was churning their way through massive fee payments to themselves?
Yeah, this is basically a much more gigantic version of something that's probably familiar to a lot of people, which that goes on with mortgages. Say you take out a variable rate mortgage, like an option ARM, and your lender will often say something to you when you buy that house, like, look, obviously this could go up, but if the interest rates go up in a couple of years, you just come back to me and we'll refinance. And that, of course, the rates go up, they come back to the lender, he refinances. Same thing happens a couple of years down the road, they have to refinance again. And every time they refinance to get themselves out of those skyrocketing rates, the lender gets his commissions and his fees, and that's called churning. That's taking this, just what you described. You take the same borrower, but you're making fees on him over and over and over again. And that's what happened with Jefferson County, Alabama. They borrowed $3 billion, but every time they had variable interest rates on some of their bond deals. So every time their debt structure started to go up, Wall Street would come back to them. J.P. Morgan would say, let's do an interest rate swap to lower those, that obligation of yours. And they kept doing it over and over and over again. They did 21 swap deals in Jefferson County. Each one of those generated millions and millions of dollars of fees for all the banks involved. And it wasn't just J.P. Morgan Chase. Bear Stearns was also involved. Everybody made money on these guys by churning these fees. And it was just a larger version of the mortgage scam.
Right, and as you point out in the story, when J.P. Morgan goes in and they talk to the municipality, they sell them on this idea of a credit default swap or an interest rate swap or a derivative as a way to mitigate their risk. And somewhere on page 7, 9, 12, or 14 of the contract is spelled out the conditions that would trigger a refinancing and a re-application of this hedge. And if anyone actually...
cancellation.
Okay, exactly. And so since you're talking about folks in these municipal counties who are not sophisticated enough to actually read through these documents and have nobody really reading through them, they just kind of take the word of the slick Wall Street salesman, the probability of this failing and the need to go churning through these products is virtually guaranteed. So having this knowledge, J.P. Morgan knows that they're going to generate millions of fees because of the fraudulent way in which these contracts are constructed, and they take the future fee from the fraud they just committed and pre-sell that in the futures market to create another whole layer of derivatives based on fraud yet to be committed.
If you divorce yourself from the actual consequences of it, it's brilliant. I mean, it's just as criminal works of art. It's really kind of fascinating to look at, but that's exactly what happened with Jefferson County. I mean, anybody who has a credit card knows if you actually look at your credit card contract, it might be as long as 30 pages long. I mean, I remember talking to Elizabeth Warren in the Congressional Oversight panel, who did this stuff for a living. She's a law professor, and she couldn't figure out the contracts for a simple credit card. So you imagine what the contract looks like for a $1 billion swap deal. And what happened to Jefferson County was, they had all these sort of very unsophisticated Southern politicians signing off on these deals, and the big one that they fell into, there was a trap in there that basically said if Jefferson County missed a payment, they could unilaterally cancel the deal. And in canceling the deal, J.P. Morgan was entitled to calculate how much money they would have collected over the course of the 30-year life of those swap deals. And so that happened in 2008. Jefferson County missed a payment, and they woke up a few months later with a bill from J.P. Morgan for $647 million. And so you had here you have a $250 million sewer system that you're paying $647 million on just in penalties for 1 year. So that's where they ended up at the end.
Have any charges been filed against even one banker?
Bankers know. The SEC has had a judgment against J.P. Morgan. They've canceled that $647 million penalty. They've also imposed $75 million in fines against J.P. Morgan. But criminal penalties, no. Again, this is a consistent part of what the financial crisis is all about. You may get convictions for minor players or politicians. The county commissioner in this case got 15 years. The small town, the investment banker who was like the middleman in these deals, he got 4 years. But nobody from J.P. Morgan went to jail, and nobody who was higher up in the food chain who was approving these deals got criminally penalized. Goldman Sachs, for taking that $3 million to go back out, did not get penalized. And that's the way this stuff works. These guys never go to jail for this stuff.
Right. And, of course, Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan, is the name most mentioned to take over from Tim Geithner to be the United States Treasury Secretary. That's going to do it for this. Matt Taibbi, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thanks for having me on.
All righty. I'm going to thank my guests, Stacey Herbert and Matt Taibbi. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.